Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hi, you're listening to the Finding Harmony podcast, and I'm your host, Harmony, and I'm so excited to share this incredible interview with you today. We are meeting with an amazing human being, Paula Vital, a lawyer turned mindfulness coach and yoga therapist, also a listener and an Ashtanga yoga practitioner, close to my heart, living in Toronto, Canada. And she has an incredible story, a very, very heartfelt, moving story. It starts off with her being born in Argentina during the Dirty War, just born into a very traumatic situation, eventually coming to Canada, and then when she was 9, her parents split up, and again, a very kind of traumatic situation. But despite all of these difficulties in her early childhood, she became an excellent student, excelling at everything, working so hard, total A-type personality, and finally hit a place where she just wasn't being successful anymore, was burnt out, and her sister helped her into a whole entire new world and field of awakening and awareness. She started studying yoga therapy and mindfulness. She sat a 10-day Vipassana course. She started practicing Ashtanga yoga very dedicatedly, and we talk a little bit about her being stuck in one of the postures, Kurmasana, for 11 years, and how frustrating that was for her as an incredibly successful lawyer, type A personality, someone who believed that she could do anything if she just really worked hard. And so we talk a little bit about what this was like, coming up against this gatekeeper posture or this block, and realizing that there was nothing she could do. There was no work she could do. She couldn't work her way out of it because it was 11 years. And so it ended up being one of her greatest teachers. And also it helped her to move more into some of these deeper aspects of mindfulness and yoga therapy, and looking at all of the deeper patterns that yoga starts to bring up and out when we commit to a practice. So I think you're really going to resonate with a lot of what we talk about, and also be deeply touched and moved by her story. It's really, really incredible, and I can't wait to jump in with you. So let's get started. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm your host, Harmony, and I'm here with Russell Case.
I'm so excited this morning, Harmony. This is the second time on the show that we've had a refugee of the Falklands War against Argentina. We have an Argentina on the phone with us today. Yeah. It's exciting. We're trying to make a big push into the South American media market. So let's see how this goes.
Perfect.
Hello,
Paula. Who was your first Argentinian guest?
She was the model that went to England.
The model that went to England.
No, she was. She was a model.
Kia
Miller. She saw some people, some friends. She saw people die and very traumatized, and then went to England to work as a model in London.
But she's a pretty famous
documentary film person as well.
Yeah, but she's very well known for her yoga teaching.
Oh, right. Yeah. We all did other things before we did the yoga.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Nice. Well, I'll check out the episode.
Yeah. She's lovely. Nice. She does a lot of yogi bhajan.
Oh, yeah, yogi bhajan.
Style yoga.
That's how we say it in Texas, yogi bhajan. I don't mean to make light of it. I'm sorry. I know it was a very difficult time for you as well. I think the Falklands War was obviously harrowing and a very, very important. And I guess it kind of set the stage for your life for going forward from that.
You know, what's interesting is that I never really made the connection between how I was born and the environment that I was born in and my personality until very recently. I would say in the last couple years, as I deepen my yoga and meditation practice, and then things come up like fear and rage and terror, and it's like, what's going on? And then, you ask the question, well, what was happening at that time? And that's when I realized I was born into a time of terror. And it wasn't just the Falkland Islands War. It was that at that time in Argentina, the military junta was in power. So they were basically taking people away that they disagreed with. Mm-hmm. And my parents had connections with the socialist groups. So it was so scary because they never knew if their car would blow up when they turned it on. We just didn't know what was going to happen. And then my brother was also away in the army because they had a conscription. So you had to be in the army. And then my mom never knew if he was dead or alive. So there was this terror in the house that I was born into that is now in my body, 45 years later. I'm like, that's so interesting that I'm so terrified still.
People talk a lot about it, insecure attachment, between the mother and the child and how destructive that can be. But so often that's from, a mother being very distracted, like say by trauma herself or abuse herself. And so I can't imagine a more unsettling thing than for a mother to be terrified that she was going to be killed. And what effect that must have on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting, though, that you said you noticed it when you started doing the yoga and the meditation more because, you lived a very full and abundant life and very successful, doing all kinds of amazing things that we can get into and not really noticing the effects on you until you kind of slowed down and started to maybe go into yourself, your body at a somatic level, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. And that's a lot of what I teach now is that achievement can become a way to bypass all that fear and terror. It's like, okay, and my mom was really good at it too. She was a doctor. She was a mom of four. She was an activist. They were doing. And I'm Jewish, so that's also part of our culture. You just do in the world. You just go and you do.
Yeah.
And in a way that makes you feel safe because if you can achieve and if you can be successful, then you're fine. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the mode for my parents. And then when we immigrated from Argentina to Canada when I was 9, it was still like, let's do it. Let's do the thing. And that fed me. And it was enough. I didn't notice the fear at all. I just thought I'm just doing the next thing and the next thing and law school and this and that and travel. And and it's kind of like this drive. It's like a drug, really.
Yeah.
But then you get to the thing and then it's like, what next? And then you need something else and you need something else until you're just like, hopefully you get to a point where you're like,
I'm tired.
It's enough. Like you're tired.
There's a lot of talk in our communities about, inherited trauma, inherit from, past generations. Certainly a Jewish family in Argentina in the first place is escaping the Holocaust, I would imagine. And that's how we got to the States as well, got to Detroit, fleeing Hungary. I imagine that there was a story there for your mom in the first place, even before the war happened. And it just compounds this drive to achieve your way out of this bananas environment that we live in.
Yeah, so true. And actually, my grandparents came before the Second World War, but still, due to persecution and whatever their struggles were, that they decided to, hop on a boat at that time and, go through months of travel to get to a land they didn't know. And my grandmother, what's interesting was that my grandmother on my mother's side was born in Palestine. So she was a Jew in Palestine, and she spoke Arabic.
Yeah.
So they were all together. And then she moved. And if I think of my grandmother's experience, which again, I didn't really think about until recently, how she left and didn't know anybody, didn't really know her husband, didn't know the language, and arrived in Argentina. And it was all like just really, really terrifying for my grandma. And then she wasn't a great mom. And so then my mom, and that's how we get to where we get until we finally decide or have the gift of knowing that we can heal all that. Like we can start at least the process of healing all that.
Her grandmother who escaped, who crawled out of a shooting pit in Hungary and got on a boat to Detroit, surprisingly not great at the mothering part.
Yeah.
So I love that you bring this up, that achieving is kind of another way of escaping, because it is like a form of running in a sense, right? And we all kind of have our own patterns or tendencies that try to avoid sitting with the fear or whatever's uncomfortable sensations, emotions, feeling, whether it's avoiding or getting so busy that you don't have time to feel it, or, maybe it's a certain emotional pattern that we fall into, right? Or, binging Netflix, who knows, right? There's all kinds of ways to escape these days. And so for you ended up going to law school. You ended up working for the government of Canada. You traveled all around the world.
What a model Jewish daughter. I mean, it's incredible. You ticked all the boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, but then something in you, what was it in you that made you decide or brought you to the place where you really felt like you needed to like go deeper or slow down, or like, how did that come about?
So yeah, we moved to Canada and it was all like that. It was like, go to school, do really well, go to university. I did an undergrad in political science and international development. I was always very interested in why people fight, wars, conflict. I felt like, why is it like a country like Argentina that has potential doesn't do well, but then a country like Canada does well? Like, what's going on? So I was interested in that, went to law school. So there was a lot of good in the achievement too, right? Because we sometimes undermine that when we get to see that there's an addictive quality to it. So after law school, there was this kind of struggle to get a good job as a lawyer, become a summer student and then an articling student and then an associate. So there was a lot of running in that. And then, and I was also on the side of fitness instructor. Early on, I became interested in movement. I think around the time when my parents got divorced, we came to Canada, they tried to work things out. Anyway, there was a divorce when I was about 15, and I found much solace in movement. So I started doing fitness. So I was doing law, but then I was also a fitness instructor. I got to go to Club Med as a fitness instructor there. And then I finally got my law job that I wanted, kind of like go climb. And there you are. And you end up in this big office that you've always wanted. And then
literally in a golden tower.
Yeah. So it's the Royal Bank Tower downtown Toronto. It has gold.
Right.
It has gold in the wall. Yeah. So then I'm like looking out the window and I say, okay, so now what? Now what? And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's because I don't have a partner yet. So, if I find the right person, then I'll be really happy. So I started dating and then had a boyfriend, had the job. I lost weight. I was really
you're looking great. Your partner, you're working in a golden tower.
You'd mentioned in your bio that the losing weight was like this kind of the low-hanging fruit of control.
Right.
Yeah, it was really effective because then you like see it. It's like, okay, if I eat this much, look what happens. And I look like, the magazine's kind of, I guess, or not, but you try, and it keeps your mind focused. In a way, all the addictions are like a way to focus the mind, right? It's like I always had a calorie number in my head, so I didn't have to think about the fact that I was sad that my dad was moving out. I just didn't have to think about that because I had the calorie in my head. And then I didn't really know what to do next, really. I was just like, okay, I have this stuff, but I still don't feel fulfilled. And I was very lucky that my sister meditated, which I thought was super weird. Like, why is she sitting there doing nothing? There is so much to do. If you wake up early, why not work out?
You mentioned that in your bio, and I if I could just ask, how did she start meditating? Like, where did that even occur to her?
So that's a really good question. I'd have to ask her. She started earlier than me. She had some support group or
someone passed her a flyer. Right.
She had a similar story. She was a PhD, and then that didn't really work out. So she's older than me. So maybe she just went through the whole thing earlier.
Okay.
She got the answer before you.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how she started, but I was like, what's that thing you're doing? And then she was just about to start the mindfulness-based stress reduction course with John Kabat-Zinn. And I happened, as things do, happened to have a little bit of time off work between my articles and my associate time or somewhere in there. And so we did the course together. And it was really, really life-changing. And one part I remember is that I would listen to John Kabat-Zinn's audio tape at the time. I think it was a CD. And I couldn't stop. Like, I was still doing stuff in my house, but I could hear him talking. And there was something about him talking that was really soothing. And then he said, "You are more than just your thoughts." And I was like, what? But I had always tried to solve all my problems through my thinking mind. And I think that's a lot of the people that I work with now. It's like, well, if I just rationally figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a kind of sentence that just explodes any kind of maybe previous religious engagement a person might have had. Because you think of yourself as a soul inhabiting a body. But when someone says, well, no, you're not your thoughts, and you're not your body, and then you're not your intellect, you're not your memories, you're not your emotions, like, well, wait a second, what is a soul? I'm confused here. I thought it was me. I thought I was those things.
Yeah.
That's
they
the
tell
soul.
you don't have a soul.
And you don't have a soul. And I'm totally, and then I'm literally, say, I think my experience of that was like reading the autobiography of a yogi and encountering that idea, that notion. It's like, it's literally mind blowing. Literally. Your mind literally explodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my first philosophy class ever, was about identity and who are you, and negating, like doing a lot of different thought experiments. If you take out your mind from your body and you do a mind swap with someone, and now their mind's in your body, your mind's in their body, where are you?
Oh.
All these fun little experiments to basically show that we aren't our mind, we aren't our body, we aren't like any one of these things, and yet somehow they're kind of a part of who we are in a way.
Wow.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a story. One time I asked my mother, is there God? I guess I was interested in this stuff when I was little, but I'd forgotten. Like, what is there, and is there God? And she said, no.
She said that?
Because she was a strong atheist. She's like, no, there's no God.
Wow.
There's only this. There's only this life. There's only this body.
Wow.
And so for her, until the days actually when she was dying, she never got my sister and my interest in meditation and yoga and all of that. Because she was just
time, yeah.
Again, waste of time. Like, why not do stuff? Until the end. And then when she was dying, she became open.
Yeah, that's so interesting too. Beautiful. I think that's also like part of a trauma response too, right? When you have like so much like historical war or judgment or around, your ethnicity or a belief system, then you can kind of just say like, no, like that doesn't exist, and it's a protection mechanism, even though it's not conscious, right? It's totally unconscious, and it's totally also gets passed down, from generations too, because you don't want to be persecuted for a belief system or for thinking something different than other people or whatever, right? So it's so interesting how so much of this gets passed down through our ancestry and our bodies even, and in our DNA potentially, like memories and traumas and all kinds of things. When you look at the epigenetics, it's stuff we don't even know happened. We might be affected by, which is really, really fascinating.
I'd also like to offer that there's counterexamples as well, culturally speaking. That the war was enormously destructive to our family. The ability to self-regulate a stress response was in a state of arrested development. But you do see other cultures that respond to centuries of stress and harassment and bigotry with a deeper dive into the church or into the temple. Like a lot of the work that I was doing in teaching yoga to teachers, we were looking at ACEs and adverse childhood experiences and the effect on adults and their well-being and their health. And in some of the Title I communities or underserved communities I was working with in Milwaukee, the ACE scores were off the charts among our teachers. They were all getting 9s and 10s, because they'd all had a litany of abuse in the inner city of Milwaukee. But they were highly functioning people who were going to church every day.
They had a community,
Yeah, they had a way.
Yeah, and that's been also shown, right? To have that community support and relationships, meaningful relationships, does wonders for longevity, health, happiness, satisfaction, success, fulfillment, all those things. So it's so important to also have that. I mean, whether it's a religious community or not. Just to have meaningful, I think, relationships in your life is...
But it's just so interesting that you have this kind of term like a jubo. I'm not sure if you've heard the term.
What is that?
But a Jewish Buddhist, and it feels like in our community, or a hubo. There's been a real turn away from the temple towards Eastern mysticism, and it seems like that's a story for you as well.
Well, we actually joined, even though my parents didn't believe in God, we did join a synagogue when we moved to Canada, just to have a place of belonging. And it was a little bit of an entryway for me. For some reason, I did decide I wanted to do a bat mitzvah, even though I have 3 older siblings that didn't do bar bat mitzvahs. I'm like, I want to do this thing. I started to sing in Hebrew. I became a song leader. And then I forgot about it when I went into university and all that. And then maybe it's because the way at least John Kabat-Zinn taught the mindfulness was so practical. It's like, here's a thing that you can do that is within your sphere of control. And he separated it from religion. Like, I didn't even connect the two. It was just like, just value yourself for being here in this moment. Like, you're actually perfectly okay as you are. If you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. So it was a relief. I think now there is more interest, at least in Judaism and maybe other religions as well, to bring in the more meditative elements that are actually there in a lot of religions. Like one of my teachers, Shinzen Young, he looked at various major religions and the meditative traditions within them and the similarities in his book, The Science of Enlightenment. So now in my synagogue, and I'm still a member, like now we're bringing it back. So yeah, so it's like there's all these techniques really to touch that place within yourself where everything's okay. And then if you can do it through religion, great. if that doesn't work for you and there's something secular that works for you, great. Or if it's another system like Buddhism, what I like, and I actually am doing Zen right now, is that it's just very logical. Like if you're a rational person like me, it's like, okay, well, here's the steps and this is how you experience liberation and this is why and this is how you help all sentient beings. Like it's just very good. And so I kind of I do both. I do a little bit of my ancestry and a little bit of yoga, which is Hindu based, and then a little bit of the Buddhism. For better or for worse, my Ashtanga teacher would say, just do this every day.
There's strong arguments to be made that even though you can do it in a very religiously way, that yoga and Buddhism are not actually religions, but actually just prescriptive philosophies of how to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're saying,
I
think that's the experience of many yoga practitioners and many spiritual seekers or people who are in this world of health and wellness and spirituality and mindfulness. Maybe we come from like a Christian heritage or some other like traditional sort of religion or religious background, but not totally connecting with it in some ways, right? And so there's aspects that maybe as a practitioner you connect with or as a person you connect with, but then you're not fully like, oh yeah, that's my scene, or those are my people. There's something there that's like just not quite sitting. Yes. And then because the world is so open now, we have so much more access to incredible teachers, teaching Buddhism or teaching, yoga or Hinduism or philosophy or, Vipassana or whatever, right? We have so much more access to these things. I think it's beautiful because, as you say, there's these elements of similarity in all these traditions. And so maybe one isn't resonating with you with this religious sort of perspective, but then you really like resonate in this other area with it. And they're both going to do the same things. It's just like maybe different language or a different way of understanding or conceptualizing what's going on that suits you and that fits. And I think that's sort of where we're at, especially as Westerners exploring Eastern religion and traditions. We don't.
That's a whole postmodern self-creation of the identity.
We don't have the same kind of, we don't grow up in a small village and just stay in our village and never leave home. I mean, we're global now, right? And even more so than when you were growing up as a child, and even you still moved countries, right? And your grandparents moved countries. And so, but now it's like you don't even have to leave your living room and you can learn from someone in India or China or Burma or anywhere in the world.
One more thing I would say that I find really appealing about yoga or Buddhism is the universality of it. Like I didn't really understand seeing the Jewish people as separate from other groups, just like, you're more than just your thoughts. So what am I? And then, well, what are we as a group? So I think those of us that have an inkling that we can see through that separateness is not really real. Like what makes me so different than the other group, really? We can put it on, it's part of us, but it's not all of who we are. So that's why I love the Buddhist yoga perspective. And then in terms of my trajectory, so I did that mindfulness-based stress reduction course. I just fell in love with it. And even in that, it was an 8-week course, but I had a moment when I was like, I'm going to teach this one day. Because this was also, I found, to be the answer to the whole world peace problem that I was always interested in, conflict. And well, it's like, as long as we feel we're our thoughts and we're our, separate ideas about things, and we're never really going to reach an understanding. So I had that sense that I was going to teach. And then somebody in that class had done a Vipassana, this 10-day retreat. I just felt it was amazing to go away for 10 days and
not talk, just meditate.
It's insane.
Yeah, not talk. And it was like, I remember going and I felt like I was going on this big journey. You know, I had traveled the world, but I had never gone in. And my mom took me to
What are you doing?
It is. It's like a sea voyage on a boat with no
And I
phone.
said, I'm doing this thing.
It's just like that.
Yeah. And I remember going to that retreat and having a thought, a problem, which was, I don't think I want to stay at this law firm. I want to do other things. And I remember going to my teacher and being like, I have to solve this problem. And they said, focus on the breathing, the nostrils. And I was like, what's the connection between the breathing at the nostrils and this big problem I have to solve about my job? But I did what she said. And then lo and behold, after 3 days, it didn't seem such a big problem anymore. And then when we got into the body, you know, we went from focusing on the breath at the nostrils to focusing on sensations throughout the body. I really loved that. I think I had been a walking head. And so this idea of focusing on the body was really refreshing. I did have like a mini realization experience, I guess I would call it, during that retreat. Like I was just walking and then I saw this tree and then things opened up. They were super bright and I was the tree. I mean, my kids love this story because they're like, you were I was actually a tree. That's the only way I could explain it. But then it went away, but it was so small and so real that then I just know it's real.
We talk about this a lot now since we've had this conversation with the spiritual emergence coach from Brazil, but that's a classic spiritually emergent experience that then impacts all of your other decisions going forward. People call it Kundalini rising, you know, or opening, you know, but it's incredibly impactful when it happens.
Yeah, you just know. And then I came home. That was hard because then it's like, oh no, I have to go back to my job and I have to do all the things. It's like the self came back with a vengeance. And then the Vipassana alone, just the sitting meditation, started to make me more depressed. I was like heavy and, you know, and Goenka says you have to sit twice a day. So then it became this other to-do thing that I must sit for 2 hours every day, plus workout, plus go to my busy job. And it just became really, really stressful. So I found yoga really just as a way of merging the exercise and the meditation into one. Like if I do it all in one, I'll save time. And then I found that it moved my depression, that the movement of the body, and this is always what I find, that sometimes if I do too much asana, it'll activate too much and I need to just sit. But then if I sit too much, I start to go back into my kind of depressed, tight state, and I need to move the body. So I started to do both the meditation and yoga. I did a yoga teacher training. And then different types of meditation.
You know, it can be observed in our community that the neuroses or the hyperanalysis that we're kind of programmed with can lead to that, you know, we're just up in our heads and we're not embodied enough. And I think that's again another, I think, catalyst for a call towards a mystical tradition that involves embodiment. And I can really see like, well, if you want to work out, then, you know, getting it all at the same time and, you know, getting your embodiment and your workout and your mindfulness approach all at the same time so that you can then go to, you know, back to your very busy job. You know, it all kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you were in Toronto when this was happening, and you just ended up in David Robson's class. Like, how did that happen?
Okay. So then what happened was, so I'm like trying to get it all in. And then I started my yoga teacher training. It was just like a classical hatha teacher training. David Robson, funny enough, was teaching at that studio way back when. He was just like another teacher at that studio.
It's Downward
before
Dog.
He was all famous and stuff. And it was called The Yoga Studio by Helen Goldstein. And Michael Stone was one of my teachers there. So it was really beautiful program. But my only goal, I remember I was at my law firm and I said, wouldn't it be nice to be able to make the 5:30 class? To be able to leave work early enough that I can go to my yoga class at 5:30. And sometimes, it's those little desires that seem so simple that really change your life. And I was like, that's really what I want. I want a job where I can go to yoga at 5:30. And so that created my change from private sector law to government, the Ontario government, where I still have my job. It's still there. One of my many jobs is there. And then I was able to do that. And then, so the integration between the yoga and the work started to happen. People started to ask me, oh, what's that yoga you're doing? And I started to teach at work. I started to do some classes and some workshops at work. But then the Ashtanga came in because I had a baby. And so I had a baby and I didn't know, I was at home with my baby and I didn't know what to practice for my yoga. I couldn't go to yoga class so easily. So I got David Swenson's book, the primary series. So I was like, I'm going to do primary series. So I did that. And then I'm like, well, I might as well find a teacher that does this Ashtanga thing. So I went to David, really loved it. And then
of course,
turned it into another achievement, which Ashtanga can it's such a good teacher for that, but also very dangerous, right? Because it's like, great, I found a being practice, like I'm just being, but really it was a doing. Like I wanted to get the poses,
as you mentioned.
And then, it was like, oh, I'm just doing this thing, but it's really my meditation. But it really wasn't. It was like, I'm going to be really good at this thing. Until I got to Supta Kurmasana, and then I couldn't do it. And I was so angry because there was no amount of effort that was going to get my legs and my arms to bind. And then I was angry for a long time.
Sometimes it's just like a weird arm-torso ratio problem. Like, can just be that simple. And like, what do you just move on? Just sometimes, teachers in India will just let you move on.
But it is interesting when you hit that pose that stops that pattern of achievement, if that's your pattern. Then as a yoga teacher, Ashtanga teacher, we always say, well, that's where the real yoga begins, right? Is when you finally are confronted with yourself and your pattern, and you can't just, do the thing that comes naturally and easy to you, but you have to do the opposite in order to get the pose, which is very fascinating, right? Learning to do less and relax more. Not care so much, not define your sense of satisfaction or success or worthiness through achievement, through doing, through status, through success at asana or anything else, right? And so
what a nightmare.
So it is interesting that, even though I think you're right that the Ashtanga system has this very sneaky way of kind of triggering these patterns that we have already ingrained with us oftentimes. It also has, when it's taught in this sort of traditional system where you are being stopped at a pose and not allowed to continue on or prevented from continuing on without spending a little bit of time there, it also kind of has some checks and balances in place for that pattern. And so, when you look at it that way, it's kind of intelligent.
100%. 100%. And for me, it was, I did stop for a while, and that's when I did yoga therapy. So I was like, what's going on that I can't do that, and found all these other methods. But then years later went back and didn't care about the Supta Kurmasana anymore. So then I saw that all that time, there was growth happening. There was growth and letting that go. And it continues to be a challenge. And I love how the more traditional Ashtanga system like kind of catches you in that, right? It's like recently I took some time off. So I took 6 months off to do just my yoga and my mindfulness coaching and to do that full time. And it was a dream. I actually saved up for 4 years in order to be able to do this. And then my goal was like, I'm going to go to AYCT to David's studio every day. I'm going to do assisting school and I'm going to go every day because I never had the chance to do that. And I thought something would happen, right? And then I went every day for a couple of months. And then I realized it was just making me really tired and it was making my family really angry because I was never home in the mornings when they needed me. And so that was another interesting, it's like, well, why do I need to go every day? Is it just because a teacher says you need to go every day? Or, can I still go some days? And so the whole rigidity of it is a teacher in some ways, because then I was like, oh, but then my teacher will be mad if I
That's so interesting, because I feel like, say 20 years ago, 2000, let's call it 2000, it was such an orthodoxy, and it was to tell a student, like we kind of felt an obligation to tell students they have to come every day. And if you weren't that kind of teacher that insisted on it, you're kind of a deviant. You're kind of, someone who just gives up, and then like you have to tell them to come every day. You have to tell them to sign up for a month. And if they don't, you kick them out. And I'm like, well, I feel like we're kind of like being told to be jerks. Like it's really a jerky position to take. I feel like there's something there that is a part of inculcating a culture of, like you said, achievement, but also, dependence.
Dependence, yeah.
Attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and again, another bypass, right? Because it's like, I go to yoga, I'm doing my thing. Like, really, you guys can figure yourselves out, my family or whatever. Like, I'm just doing my thing, Instead of, like, I would say, the way I would approach it now, or the way Zen would propose it, at least the way I'm being taught it, is that it's all equally important, right? Whether you're doing your asana postures, or whether you're drinking tea, or whether you are dealing with your child that's mad at you, it's all the practice and how we come back to that moment. And it's hard. It continues to be hard when you have that gift and challenge of ambition, of thinking that if you just do the next thing, then you're going to really have it. You're going to have it all together. But what I found, and I was looking forward to this time off, not just to do Ashtanga, but also to do my mindfulness coaching full time. I thought, that's going to be my dream. But I found that there's challenges with that too. It's like running a business versus I'm at work and I run a mindfulness program now in the government. So it's like, it's all set up for me, like there's benefits to both. And you kind of learn that there's really it's a continual lesson that there's nothing in the future or outside of yourself that's going to bring you happiness. Like there's really nothing. And so that's
kind of disappointing.
Kind of disappointing. Because the only work that you can do is really within yourself, and then to share that whatever you find within yourself, and then you see it in the other, if you're afraid or if you're angry, then, oh, look, they're afraid and angry too. How can I help?
I love that. I think that's so true. And like when you really get that, like you're saying, when you really try all the things that you think, oh, my life's going to be so great if only, fill in the blank. And then you get there and you're like, this has a lot of challenges and, suffering inbuilt with it too. And you really understand that there's you've tried so many things.
That's exactly what Harmony told me about getting a French bulldog. She said, I really feel like this will be the thing that allows us to experience full happiness. And she said, there's a lot that goes into that you're going to find just raises the bar for happiness. I was like, I really think a third dog is...
a third dog is not going to help us at this point.
But the little ears...
But you got to try, right?
Yeah, and then, and in a way, it's so interesting because That's one of the interpretations of the Yoga Sutras that you've come to know and love, right?
Okay.
That idea that Atha Yoga Anushasanam, like now. Finally.
Yoga.
After you've tried all of these things
Everything.
and done all of these things, and kind of like including the yoga.
We bought a trampoline, and we bought the treadmill, and it's like it's not contributed fuck all of our happiness.
So then now, Atha, finally, yoga unfolds within, or yoga's revealed within, which I love also because it's like now in this moment, yoga's actually happening within. And it's not happening out there in that moment. It's not happening outside of yourself or in some future time. It's actually just happening right now in this moment here. And that's exactly what you were just explaining, right? It's happening in washing the dishes, in taking care of the kids, in walking the dog.
It's happening all the time.
In the meditation, in the yoga practice, like when you're driving your car, all the things, right?
Yeah. And that reminds me of something else. It's like, then why do we do anything, right? So I remember when I came back to Ashtanga and I asked one of my other teachers, Svetlana's her name, she's really lovely. And I said, so then why do we bother with the poses? And she said, because we love it. You do it if you love it.
Yeah.
Do the things that you love. And if you don't love it, maybe do something else for a while. Yeah. And then you might miss it and you come back.
The ultimate futility of your work is it has to be the thing that allows you to do the work. It's the because you're doing like Krishna says, you're doing the work for the sake of work, and then you're trying to become a kind of artist at work. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm efficient and beautiful and effortless at the thing that I do, my dharma, or whatever that is, and that is the pursuit, not the fruits of the labor. All these paintings that I have that are going to be burned up when the sun explodes, in 4 billion years, which pains me.
Or 5 years from now, we don't know.
5 years. I mean, okay, it's possible. But it's certainly in 4 billion years, all of my stuff will get burned up when the sun explodes. No one's keeping my stuff safe. And it's like, that's a real grim future for my work, But that wasn't the point. The point was the work itself.
Yes. Yeah, and that's so liberating because then everything we do can become just our offering.
Yeah, I love
our
that.
offering of love.
I want to touch back on this theme in your life of looking at cultures and people and war and peace and how you feel the mindfulness, coaching that you're doing and all of these insights you've gleaned through your experience and your history and just your studies even. What is it that that creates harmony, that creates love and harmony in between people or even within our own selves, which maybe is the key?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's actually very subtle because when we first go, like I did, to action in the world, to internal work, at least for me, there was this period where I was like, internal work is what matters the most, and that's what we should all do. And what I've realized, especially during my time off, where I wasn't doing policy work, I was just doing mindfulness coaching. And interestingly enough, the war in the Middle East broke out. I realized that that's not enough, that we need to do our internal work. So we need to address our fear and our anger and our delusion for sure. And then also, there are all these other people in the world that may or may not be doing their work, their internal work. And we have to meet them where they're at. And we have to, as best we can, contribute to solving problems in the real world. So now I kind of feel like do your internal work and then ask yourself, and I mentioned it before, like, how can I best help? And maybe for someone like me that for a while rejected the law and the policy, and I thought, I just want to do yoga all day, maybe it's actually going back, right? And doing some of the policy work and intergovernmental. And like I heard somebody today talk about the 8 Abraham Accords in the Middle East and Like there's things that we can do in the world that are really practical that can help bring us towards peace beyond just hanging out in the bliss of it. It's almost like that's the beginning. You know, we think when we touch it, it's like, oh, well, this is the end. Everybody should just, like I called my business Live the Present. And at first I was just trying to teach people to live the present. And I realized people didn't want to live the present. They wanted to, you know, lose weight or solve the problem or do this or, you know, and now my focus is helping people that are very unhappy at work, you know, because that was my story. And then how can you, in that workplace that may be full of people that are deluded, how can you bring a little bit more clarity? You know, how can you be almost like that little light that can help people see a little bit more clearly? And it's not such fun work. Because, you know, it's easier to just leave the toxicity, but then it's like, it's happening. Yeah. So we need
like
to
Gandhi says, be the
get
change,
in there.
Right?
That you want to. It's very much a bodhisattva position.
Yeah,
it's nice. I was thinking about this last night. We just come home and standing out in the backyard, and our dog came and urinated on our bodhisattva. And
a statue.
And it just sort of left. It was like, well, I don't know if I really need to do anything about this. I'm just trying to lead the dog towards enlightenment. I'm like, punishing the dog for urinating on the bodhisattva seems really counterproductive. But anyway.
I love that. I think it's a natural also inclination of the heart, because when you do have those really deep, powerful, profound spiritual experiences, like your experience in the Vipassana, where you really felt that oneness between you and the tree, right? And you realize like, oh, I'm a part of the earth. And being a part of the earth is being a part of everything on the earth.
Everything.
And when you feel that in your cells and you feel it in your consciousness, it's a natural outpouring to want to serve, right? And so, yes, it's definitely, I mean, you have to do your own work if you're going to serve, because serving's really hard, right? Like being that light in a hostile workplace, it's challenging. Like you say, it's not like fun, blissed out kind of work, but it also can make a big difference for people.
Huge. And if you're feeling unfulfilled at work, let me tell you, there are others there that are feeling the same. So that was the key for me, is like, oh, I hate my job. That was my thing. I need to find something else. And I was looking for either another law job or I don't know, something. Then I thought maybe do the yoga, mindfulness full time. But then I said, okay, well, what am I missing? You know, well, I was missing the connection. I was missing people that cared about my emotional well-being, you know, and I started to say, well, who else is feeling that way? So connecting with other people and then starting to build something together. And that's how our mindfulness program in the Ontario government started out. It was like, well, I'd like to do this with somebody else. Is there somebody else that wants to? And when we launched that, we thought we were planning to do one 15-minute mindfulness session over the phone a week. And then I put out a call for facilitators to see who would want to lead those. And I got so many. There were so many yoga teachers and meditation teachers within government. So we're like, oh my God, we can offer one every day. So we decided we're just going to offer one every day. And then we put it out to everybody. And we had so many people sign up that we were doing everything manually because we thought we'd have like because who actually wants to do this
all of
in
them.
The government? Turns out all these people want to do this in the government. Oh my God. And we were like bombarded with, and so now it's like grown and it's huge now. It's become such a big thing, but it really just started with me feeling really alone there and unhappy at work. And then now it's like, I would say it's 60 to 70% of what I do is running this mindfulness program and running a wellness masterminds. I still do my policy work, but I've been And especially after COVID, when, even leadership was like, wow, we need to, this mental health thing that people are talking about, it's like a real thing. And it's like, yes. And I had one of my leaders call me and be like, what's that thing that you're doing? Can you do that for us? That meditation thing. So now it's really recognized. So, in any workplace, if you can even just find one more person that's like-minded, you can start to shift the whole culture. It's really beautiful
awesome.
to watch.
A little ripple effect through the government. I mean, I think that's probably one place that really can use mindfulness work.
You do MBSR training specifically?
So now I've been trained in Shinzen Young's system that's called Unified Mindfulness. I find it's really, really practical for people who do not have time, because you don't actually need dedicated time to practice mindfulness or yoga. You can double it up onto an activity you're already doing. Like if you're commuting or you're walking, see, hear, feel. What do you see, hear, or feel in the moment? So it's very practical. And that's what I've been teaching, but then different facilitators within my program.
It sounds like that's the technology
what I teach.
That you teach. I guess my question is like, what made Jon Kabat-Zinn's work so scalable was that it was easy for an institution to pick up the practice because of the way that it was described or marketed. It's mindfulness-based stress reduction. Like we're not teaching religion. It's not a religion class within Kaiser Permanente HMO. It's this is a practice that is suitable in a non-denominational way for all of the different groups and ethnicities in our organization, and it will help everybody. So when you're running a program, how is it described and marketed, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, totally secular. And most people are now familiar with mindfulness, but now there's pros and cons with the term mindfulness. So what I've been using lately from Shinzen's school as well as attention training. You're basically teaching three things. You're teaching concentration, the ability to focus on whatever you want to focus on at any particular time. It doesn't have to be one thing. If you want to be in a meeting and do your emails, that's fine, as long as you're aware that you're splitting your attention between both. So that's concentration. Sensory clarity, the ability to recognize what's actually happening in the moment, both outside of you, the emails coming in, people talking to you, internal to you. Oh no, I feel dread that there's a new deadline when I have to go and run and pick up the kids. So that's sensory clarity. This is happening outside. This is happening inside. You can see clearly what you see, hear, and feel in the moment. And then equanimity, which is the ability to be with pleasant and unpleasant and be okay with the reality that both are here and they come and go, and that you can just respond effectively to both pleasant and unpleasant in your life. So those are the three skill sets, but yeah, totally secular. You're just really teaching attention, which is now so hijacked also by, all the things that are trying to pull our attention. So it's like you be the master of your attention. You get to decide.
I didn't think that your class was called Shinzen. So I was like, I'm wondering. It was like, but no, it's such a different world than the one that we went to high school in. And it's incredible to see that it has picked up so in such a broad way.
Yeah, like across culture, I think it's very. I mean, the teachings that come out of Southeast Asia and East Asia, Buddhism, the origins of yoga, they're just so practical, universal, like you said, right? They're non-denominational, non-secular. They can be put into scientific kind of terms. Science is doing tons of research to even like prove the effectiveness of these practices now. I mean, it's incredible because, like you say, Russell, I mean, like 40 years ago, no one was really talking about this. And if they were, it was like really out there, right? It was really far out.
It's just these hippy dippies out in them.
Yeah. And I like to think of it like working out. Like if you told somebody 50 years ago, here's a pair of running shoes, go run, they would be like, why? Right? And that hopefully, mind training or attention training will be the same. It's like, you got to take care of your mind just like you take care of your body. You might choose not to exercise, but it's good for you. Right? So it's the same. Like we should all know that training our minds is good for us.
It's like when you watch a period drama like Mad Men, or we watched that Halston show on TV on Netflix recently.
Yeah.
And people are just constantly smoking and drinking a Scotch and Coke at 10 in the morning.
Smoking.
And passing around the cocaine bowl. It's like a very different world to go from that to like, we should make sure that we have a gym in the office that every people can work out.
And then train them on attention, control, and mindfulness-based practices.
Yeah, we're going to make sure that, Twitter offers a Mysore Ashtanga room, in the morning for our workers, like very different world.
But it is interesting. I mean, you probably remember this growing up in Canada, like, I don't know, maybe in the 80s, maybe mid-80s. We had all these government commercials about participation. Get with the action.
Participation? Get with the action? What kind of action was that?
It was like a whole government campaign to get people out doing exactly that. Running, being active, like trying to do healthy habits.
I'm just like, that's why
for your body.
That's why I have cocaine, is so I'm more active. What are you talking about?
So I think it's great that you are bringing this mindfulness kind of coaching into the government, because if the people in government can feel from themselves the benefits of this kind of training and practice, I mean, that can change society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other area is lawyers, right? Because that's where I came from. So now I've been doing a lot of work with the Canadian Bar Association and some law firms, and seeing the connection between doing this and productivity. That's what's going to sell people on it. Businesses is that you actually are a better worker. If you're relaxed,
and I think lawyers could use this, especially from what I hear. Very stressful. Very stressful
hard
work environments, I think.
It's interesting. I was involved in a policy push with John Kabat-Zinn, the Institute for Asian Pacific Islanders. It invited us to a talk, and we did a talk about the efficacy of mindfulness on your health. And we thought that was going to be a big push, and that was going to be where we would get traction. And the policy guys that were there, like from the NIH, the National Institute of Health in the States, it has said to us, like, that's all well and good, that this makes you live longer. But in politics, this is about quantifiable outcomes. You need to prove to us that this reduces teenage pregnancy and teenage violence in schools. And then we have something to talk about, which is exactly what we're talking about is like, if in government you're getting more productivity because you have a mindfulness program, then you have leverage to shift policy.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been some work in that too. I know in the UK, they had a Mindful UK. So starting to think about policy throughout the society, policy for mindfulness in all sectors, like education. A lot of the people that call into our program are working in jails. So imagine the impact of that. You're the warden in a jail, and how you interact with your, the inmates, and same with teachers in school.
If you can count the number of people who are put in the hole through violence, and that number reduces after introducing a mindfulness program, well, then you can change policy at other jails. It's like, if you want to reduce violence, then you need to have this program. This program is cheaper than the healthcare costs of hurt in inmates. It's like, then you can start doing math. It's like, this works.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so inspiring to think about, that it really just takes one person, like you're saying, one person who's willing to open up themselves or into this greater sphere of bringing mindfulness, bringing this work to more people. And then, like you're saying, it can really shift how people are even interacting with each other, which I think moves to your greater vision and heart for bringing more peace to the world and less conflict, and people really like seeing each other and feeling each other and understanding, okay, this is happening outside of me, what's happening inside of me, and being able to see, like, how am I projecting onto this situation, or how is this fear being projected onto a situation, and is that even the real situation? Like, just having all this awareness, which is what you're describing, like more and more awareness around how we are feeling truly, and then also what's actually the reality happening outside of us, so that we're not getting confused all the time. Yeah. It's beautiful. Really, really beautiful. So how can people work with you if they wanted to reach out and talk to you some more about the work that you're doing and the coaching?
Yeah. So my website is livethepresent.ca. And I do have a free worksheet that actually works through 3 steps where you can take any situation that you're facing and see it as an opportunity to bring something positive to yourself and to the world. So you can feel free to download that. It's called 3 Steps to Turn Stress into Your Superpower. And it's this concept of recycle the reaction. So whatever, you're hating or a feeling that is hard or difficult in the moment, how can you untangle it to find a way through it and a solution or a response that works for you? And I offer one-to-one coaching. I offer coaching for organizations. I do both mindfulness coaching and yoga therapy, depending on what people are needing. Yeah, and I'm just so happy to connect with anyone that is really feeling like they don't know what to do next. Maybe they're feeling a little bit lost and stuck at work, and it's really busy and it's really hard. And it is possible to find some ease and joy at work and in your life.
Yeah,
beautiful.
The hardest is when you're feeling that and you work for yourself. You're like, I hate my boss.
I hate my boss.
They're always pushing me too hard.
She really isn't like the best boss you've had.
I am such a shitty boss. She's terrible.
No days off. No breaks during the day. If you guys could just do a mindfulness practice like twice a day.
Right? I'm going to talk to her about it.
You should institute something. Show her the numbers.
I'll show her the numbers.
Yeah. And it is really hard. The pausing, right? Yeah. The pausing is the hardest part. And we do it to ourselves.
You do something amazing. I read this. You use a tomato timer.
Oh, yeah.
And you have that tomato timer going all the time?
Oh, yes.
And every 25 minutes it goes off?
That's a great time hack, actually.
I do.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, from my sister. I love my sister. She was using it for procrastination because she finds it hard to focus on one thing. And for me, I have the opposite problem. I hyper-focus and then I don't take breaks. So either way, you can Google tomato timer. It's free. And you just put it on for 25 minutes.
No, it's an old-fashioned
tomato timer.
We have one upstairs. No, we have one already. I have one.
Tomato timer.
But you can do it on the web. I just use the website. tomatotimer.com.
Yeah, you could use it on the website. Okay. Technology.
And you'll see how hard it is to take a pause when they tell you it's over. It's like, but I can't. I'm not done. But then it weighs on you and it's like, okay, maybe after the second round, you'll take a pause. And move your body if you're sitting, like get up. Or take a breath. Yeah.
The cool thing about the having dogs in the house where you work is they're like little tomato timers.
They are.
And they tell like it's time to get up now. It's like
yes, you have to walk them.
Get up.
Yeah, if you sit in one place too long and it's time to walk,
they'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's like a little alarm going off.
It's so good.
You got to do it.
They're such good teachers.
You have to do it. We should have more animals at work. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that would be an interesting, project for someone. to bring in animals.
Speaking about pets at work, the hairdresser I go to, they allow their staff to bring their dogs to work. And it's awesome.
So does our Nissan dealership.
Yeah.
They also have dogs at the office.
It's so, I mean, I guess if you don't like dogs, maybe you're not going to go to the hair salon, but it's really, I like it. I think it's very sweet.
There's already so much hair at the hair salon.
There's so much hair at the hair salon already. It doesn't matter.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us. It's so, I know you've probably just gotten off work and you're exhausted, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it was super nice to connect with you. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Well, that was fun. And if you are interested in exploring and having even more fun with me in person, then I'd encourage you to come save your spot and enjoy 10 days with me in this beautiful Turkish location in an intimate retreat setting. Just imagine starting your day off with chanting, meditation, pranayama, followed by Mysore-style asana or a guided class, having one-on-one support and adjustments from me, followed by a delicious brunch, a Turkish breakfast with Turkish tea and Turkish coffee, and then time to yourself to go deep, to journal or explore the city, or take a boat ride to a Greek island, maybe explore the ancient city of Ephesus, or just go to the beach and relax and unwind and suntan. It's so much fun. We have a beautiful, delicious time enjoying all that Turkey has to offer on the Mediterranean coast of the Aegean Sea. And I hope that you'll come and join me. So if you're interested, you can find out more information on my website, harmonyslater.com/yoga-retreat-Turkey. All the details are there, but if you have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out, DM me on Instagram at harmonyslaterofficial, or you can send me an email. It's all there for you, and I'm here for you as well. So come on and take a beautiful yoga vacation, retreat with me to Turkey. I would love to see you there. There's a few more spots open, and I hope that you take one of them for yourself. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.